Ahí va a llegar el gol del Arsenal. Ozil. Marca Mesut Ozil.
Pisando la pelota Nelson, a la media vuelta se vuelve a marchar Nelson, Martinelli con la pelota, el recorte de Martinelli, segundo tanto de Martinelli, segundo gol de Gabriel Martinelli.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always with James from Gunnerblog. James, good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Happy Interlull.
Happy Interlull to you as well. Before we came on air, we were sort of chatting warily about where this podcast might go and where it might take us, but all we can do is our best with what little we have, and there is very little out there at the moment.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I've been reading about this morning. I've been reading about Nico Yennaris. Are you aware of this story?
He's become Chinese.
Someone else. Yeah. He's become Chinese, and his name is like... Oh, no, sorry. His name is Li Ke.
Right.
Li Ke. Yeah. He's changed his name. He's Chinese. He plays for China now.
That is kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he does have a link to China. I seem to remember he was one of these players who was eligible to play for about 6 countries. I think Yennaris is a Greek name. I think his mum might be of Chinese origin. But yeah, they are going through a process of sort of naturalising players very rapidly in order to improve their World Cup chances. I'm
just looking here. Yeah, there's a piece in the Times. This paragraph: Li qualifies to play for China through his maternal grandmother, who came to London from Guangdong. I'm probably saying that completely wrong. Apologies to any Chinese listeners out there, which is a province in the southeast of the country. As China does not recognize dual nationality, he's had to give up his British citizenship. So China basically are just doing what Ireland did for years. They just take anyone who's got a grandmother who's Irish. Like, you think of all the players, Ray Houghton, John Aldridge, lots of Andy Townsend, all of these guys who qualified through either a parent or a grandparent to play for the Republic of Ireland, despite the fact they were born in the UK, which of course is not uncommon for people of Irish extraction to be born over there, as you know, I can testify. So very interesting, though. It's quite the leap, isn't it? Because he was playing for Brentford, Nico Yennaris, ex Nico Yennaris,
the artist formerly known as Nico Yennaris. He was playing at Brentford. I think he moved to China in the summer, and now he's an international star. I think he's been very well received there. He's the poster boy, really. So quite an amazing story. I think they are nationalising. Is that the word? I've forgotten what the word. Adopting people who don't necessarily have Chinese heritage, like a lot of Brazilians, but I presume they'll have been there long enough to qualify. Must be the way it's happening. They're playing in the league out there.
I like this bit where he's being helped to adapt to local cuisine by a teammate whose wife speaks English, and he says, he always tells me it's chicken. I say, it's definitely not chicken. I ended up eating cow stomach, which was not for me, cow tongue, jellyfish, and chicken foot, which is actually chicken.
Oh, well, there you go. It's a bit of a chicken.
It's a bit, not the best bit of the chicken, but it's definitely a bit of a chicken.
I mean, I don't know. I've never eaten it. Have you ever eaten it? Maybe it's delicious. Maybe we're all fools.
I remember when I lived in Spain, they used to sell chicken's feet in the supermarket. So you go along and, where they would have like prepackaged meat, and you get burgers and pork and steaks and stuff. And they used to, in one of the supermarkets nearby, they would have chicken's feet, but I was never tempted.
Okay.
Never.
I wonder what people were doing with them in Spain. Putting them in a stew?
Maybe putting them in a stew, maybe making stock out of them, maybe, I don't know, deep frying them, covering them in some crunchy, delicious batter, and then...
Like crisps, Preserve them before a meal.
Yeah, little crispy hors d'oeuvres.
So, as you can imagine, when I saw that about Nico Yennaris, I was like delighted. Well, that'll be 5 minutes of the podcast.
4 minutes, 10 seconds. We haven't even got 5 minutes.
He's under-delivered.
Oh, well, what can you do? Yeah, it has been quite an interlull, hasn't it? Although there were some things last week which kind of kept us occupied since the last time we spoke. But as the interlull has gone on, the Arsenal news has diminished to almost nothing, which I guess is to be expected.
Yeah, I do wonder to what extent that's to do with the fact that people are a bit sort of fatigued of maybe the team's performances, and there's almost a willingness to step away from supporters. You know, there's not quite the sort of fervid pursuit of what our players are up to on international duty you get when things are going really well. But quite a few things have happened. I've seen Arsene Wenger since I last spoke to you.
Yes, that's right. You posted some pictures. You were at that event last week. I did enjoy all the people who thought, hang on a minute, James is really quite tall. What's going on here? Everyone thinks
predictable response.
Everyone thinks he must be, 5'2" or something. I don't quite get what this is.
The voice of a small man. Or they just think that I'm sort of a small man who lives in your mind, maybe. I live inside your head.
Yeah, a projection of my inner self, or some
your
kind
darkest
of
nightmares.
Yeah. I think I could do better if that was the case. In fairness, no offence.
No, that's all right. But I'm not as tall as Arsene Wenger. He is an exceptionally tall man, but looking very good. You know,
what was it like? Coming face to face with the old boss. Does he still have that kind of that aura, that sort of sense of this, like, I told you, I've told this story before where I was in a room where everybody was chatting, everyone's having a great old time, everyone's having a laugh. Arsene Wenger walked in and the place went...
Yeah.
And then
he still has that. He has it in spades, you know. He commands such authority, and he's able to do it in such a quiet way. It's very scary looking into the eyes of someone who you know is much cleverer than you. It really is, because you know, you're like, everything you say, you know, he's capable of pulling it apart or turning it on its head. So, you know, and also this man's a real hero, I suppose, to any Arsenal fan, so you don't want to make a fool of yourself. I mean, there is that concern, a bit like when I met Pierre-Emerick for the first time, that I might just make a noise, really, rather than say any words, just sort of go, yeah. So that's perennially there in the back of your mind. But it was amazing to see him, and to be honest, the event was sort of honouring him, really. It was for a good charity as well that do sort of music therapy, but it was amazing to see how many people turned up. I mean, this was on a weeknight, a Monday night in central London, and yet really the great and the good of anyone who's been associated with Arsenal in recent years were all there for him, and amazing to see the esteem in which he is held. And I know it's only been, what has it been since he left Arsenal? I mean, a year and a half, really. But I do feel like even that little period of time has really seen a bit of a sea change and sort of I'm not going to use the word redemption because I don't think he had anything to redeem, but I think a healing of any wounds that were caused, you know, during those last few years of his reign seems to have taken place, and people seem very willing to celebrate Arsene now. Time is a great healer. That's that's the thing. But of course, there are going to be people at the far end of that spectrum who of course, which is prevalent throughout all kind of aspects of life, I guess you would say. But yeah, look, I think the fact that so many people came out, and some of the people who were there to pay tribute to him, and I saw some. Were you in the actual event itself? No, I'm not that important. You only got to do the red carpet stuff, and you weren't allowed in. I was on the red carpet, exactly. But I had spies on the inside who, texted me updates. So that's the closest I could get. If only you worked for an organisation that had, loads of money to throw around and could have got you a ticket at one of the tables. Only. I'm sorry, James. I should have dug deeper into the Arseblog coffers for you there. But, I heard that the speech that he gave was quite something. He just stood up and talked for 15 minutes, no notes, no anything. He's always been an amazing speaker and somebody who's great to listen to. And obviously the big story this morning, which I'm sure you've seen, is that he has a book coming out. Arsene Wenger's autobiography is going to be published in autumn 2020. And I think we've got a couple of questions about that, so we might wait till part 2 of the show. But that is definitely going to be an interesting book. Definitely. And I think he said he wanted to do it in French first, didn't he? So it'll be interesting to see how that all...
It's coming out in French and English simultaneously.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Lovely.
So,
maybe I'll get both and brush up my skills, like a sort of Rosetta Stone of Arsene Wenger.
I think I'll just get the English one. Just make it a lot easier.
Just quicker.
Yeah, just quicker.
I am really excited about that. I had about 4 minutes with Arsene, and my list of questions at the bottom of the list was, what happened with Park Chu-young? But it just wasn't the time or the place.
You just didn't get there. You didn't get there. No. The book, I'm sure, will tell us, because that's got to be a chapter on its own.
Surely that's the most pressing concern. That'll be like the foreword, I imagine. Or that'll be. It's got to be the headline chapter.
Yeah, exactly. Who's doing the foreword? Amari Bischoff is doing the foreword. The Stefan Maltz, Park Chu-young, and I'm sure there are some others. That we could talk about,
and a few others.
That is going to be good. So yeah, okay. We'll touch on questions, or actually, will we just do questions as we go along? Should we?
You can if you like.
I think
to hell with the format.
To hell with the format. Okay. Well, we've got one from Generational, who's at Adjust Rankings, who says, "Are you hopeful that Arsene burns every motherfucker he needs to in the reported autobiography, or do you unfortunately see him maintaining his class and decorum?"
I think he'll maintain his class and decorum, I'll be honest. Maybe one or two people will get a shot, but I feel like he's quite a measured guy, Arsene, and I think he still wants to stay in the game in some capacity. It looks like it might be at FIFA, and I just think he'll be sort of better than that, really. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. I tend to agree, but also, over the years, I think he's taken some flack by protecting some people who didn't necessarily deserve to be protected. I think even there are people who made his life difficult, who, if he wanted to set the record straight in a few things, nobody would blame him. Would it be, unreasonable for him to settle a score or two, or is that petty? I don't think it is. But then you imagine, for example, the difficulty he might have with a situation like, remember the whole Darren Dean selling off all our best players, becoming their agent and selling off all their best players, which I'm sure didn't really please Arsene that well. But of course, his relationship with David Dean, his great friendship with David Dean, might make it really difficult to stick the boot in there. But at the same time, he could also just tell his version of events. So
I think there might have to be a little bit of reading between the lines, is what I'd imagine with Arsene. He's always been a bit like that. He will tell you things without telling you necessarily. There'll be the equivalent of the literary equivalent of the mischievous smile, I think, in a lot of it. I think there will be disguised barbs. I mean, what did you make of Robin van Persie playing quite a prominent role in this Arsene Wenger event? I think he was one of the guys who spoke a few words and presented with him an award, and he was certainly there on the red carpet. And a lot of fans, certainly on my timeline, were like, what the hell's Van Persie doing there? Do you think that's all war under the bridge, or do you think he might be someone who Arsene had a few words to say about?
I think as fans, we take stuff like what happened with Van Persie. I think it affects us more, perhaps. For Wenger, it was another player in a long career who agitated for a move to a different club, something he has dealt with time and time and time again. And I'm sure he didn't necessarily view it as personal. Whereas as fans, we're going, oh, Van Persie, you're an asshole with your stupid letter and everything else and all that. So the way we view things and the way they view things are often very different. So it was a little bit of a surprise to see Van Persie front and center in that, but I do wonder also if it has to do with the nascent broadcasting punditry career that Van Persie is embarking on, and whether that might have been, some people behind the scenes getting him front and center and getting people used to his face again and everything else. Did I think Arsene was going to turn around and give him a slap? Of course not. He's not going to do that. Would he might have preferred somebody else? I don't know. I can't say. I just think, as fans, we bear grudges and we hold grudges for far longer than people within the game themselves do, I think. Unless it's something particularly egregious or something, that goes completely and utterly beyond the realms of what's acceptable for a professional footballer to do. And ultimately, Arsene Wenger decided to sell Robin van Persie to Manchester United. He made that decision. He sanctioned that deal. He took the money, and what happened. So yeah, I don't know.
It would have been good if he had slapped him, though. That would have been pretty entertaining.
Would have been like a big dust up there on the red carpet, like one of those cartoon ones where all you can see is a cloud and like an arm coming out, and a leg coming out. Yeah. That would have been good, because I saw Lauren was there as well.
Exactly, that's the backup you need in a scrap. Wenger
and Lauren versus Van Persie. That would have been it would have been curtains for Van Persie, I'd say.
Yeah, but we've got to put up with it now. Like you say, he's on BT Sport, so. If you watch BT Sport, you brought it on yourself, really. They've got a horrible lineup of pundits, BT Sport.
They do, don't they? Michael Owen,
Robin van Persie.
Robbie Savage,
Rio Ferdinand.
It's
not the strongest.
It's not great, actually, but do you know what? I got an email during the week. Let me see if I can find it here. It is from Mayeroon, who goes by the name of May. Okay. And they wanted to point out that they really enjoy John Hartson's commentary when Arsenal are playing in Europa League games, because he's really quite positive about Arsenal.
Yeah, he is enjoyably biased, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. I hadn't thought of that,
He's sort of a throwback to the old days where, the commentators would sort of side very obviously with the British team. I mean, obviously he's got a personal connection to Arsenal, but yeah, he is very sort of subjectively favoured towards us, and that's nice.
Yeah, it is. So big some chops for John Hartson there.
He's the anti-Stuart Robson.
Yes, he definitely is. Who else was there that you spoke to? Anyone interesting?
Oh, I spoke to lots of interesting people. I was very fortunate. Lauren was there, Jens Lehmann, David Dean himself. Trying to think, other players. Jack Wilshere. Had a brief chat with Carl Jenkinson. Trying to think now. It was mainly people who aren't at the club right now, There were a few. Robert Pires was there, Freddie Ljungberg was there, but they were keeping quite a low profile. I saw Vinay. I didn't see Don Raoul, but I imagine he probably was there. Like I say, I was very much on the fringes of this event. Trying to sort of sneak in through the kitchen disguised as a waiter. Just my head under a cloche, popping up at tables.
Exactly. You would have been a bit like Leslie Nielsen in The Naked Gun or one of those movies. It was
very much that sort of thing.
Yeah, just spilling some hot soup all over the Queen. Just scalding the face off the Queen or something. I did like Carl Jenkinson's look on the night. He was wearing a boot, the protective boot, because he's injured at the moment, but I thoroughly was into his like open shirt with the big wide lapels on it. He looked like something out of American Hustle. It was good.
Yeah. The boot was a lovely compliment on the look as well. I did have a brief chat with Jenkinson, and he was really, as you can imagine, gutted about the Forest Cup game and the fact that he'd missed that. I think he was sort of very obviously down about that. So I hope he does get another opportunity to come back to the Emirates Stadium, because he really is an absolutely massive Arsenal fan, and that, talking to him, that was really evident. So fingers crossed. I mean, surely in the course of his career that will come around again, you'd like to think.
Yes. Should we take a quick look at what some of our players have been doing while they're on international duty? This comes from the official Arsenal website. With 5 players in action over the weekend. Nicolas Pepe scored in the Ivory Coast's 3-1 friendly win over the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's good.
That's
a goal for him.
Good thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very welcome thing for him. I was just trying to see if I could see the goal. Nicolas Pepe scored a back heel goal for Ivory Coast.
Little flicky thing.
Oh, I see. Right. An assist from Wilfried Zaha.
Was good work. Good work from Zaha in the box, and Pepe just sort of flicked it in.
That is great work from Zaha, to be fair, and a neat little finish. So that's Pepe. Who else has been?
Lucas Torreira was also in international friendly action, playing the full 90 minutes in midfield to help Uruguay beat Peru 1-0 in Montevideo. Brian Rodriguez's 17th minute strike was enough to guarantee victory for the hosts. Torreira will be hoping to be in action again in the early hours of Wednesday morning when the two sides meet again, 2:30 a.m. UK time. That's really weird, isn't it? Playing Peru twice.
That is unusual.
Like, particularly if it's a friendly, like if it's two legs of a qualifier or something like that.
It's strange that they just say in midfield. They don't specify, as the holding midfielder or as the guy playing in the 6-yard box running beyond the striker. Unclear. well, the mystery remains. Okay. Who else? Didn't Aubameyang score, I think, for Gabon?
I don't know. Did he?
Well, that's what I was told by Amy Lawrence, but, we know that she's...
Yeah, this was
a lie.
This was 3 days ago, though, so they already did the update on that.
I see.
Aubameyang returned for Gabon in perfect fashion as he dispatched an 84th minute penalty to help them edge past Burkina Faso. So that's good. Yeah, I did like Amy's piece in The Athletic about Aubameyang, and there was insight from Sven Mislintat and what have you. And
did you come away from it feeling, why isn't he captain? Because that's how I felt when I read it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd written about it and we talked about it on this podcast. I was quite behind the idea of making him captain. So, look, obviously Unai Emery has gone in a different direction, and on such decisions will he be judged between now and the end of the season. So let's get back to what's going on. Sead Kolasinac played the full 90 minutes. I like the way they put this in, on the left of a back four, as Bosnia and Herzegovina.
With him, they have specified the precise position.
The precise position. They beat Finland 4-1 in a Euro 2020 qualifying game. What else? Granit Xhaka's Switzerland lost to a late goal against Denmark in Copenhagen. I saw Kasper Schmeichel make a great save from Xhaka's shot, actually. It was, you know the way we say when a long shot, the keeper gets a touch on it and it sort of spoils the goal a little bit, spoils the aesthetic of the goal a little bit. Schmeichel's save from Xhaka, he tipped the ball onto the bar, and I think that makes it a better save.
Ah, interesting. Does he tip it onto the underside of the bar? Like, where does it bounce out?
It sort of bounces up, I think. I'm going to have to think up. But I watched it last night. It sort of bounced up and away to the goalkeeper's left a little bit. But it was a very good save. Xhaka picked out the top corner. Schmeichel came across and just put a hand up and onto the bar and away. And I think that makes it a better save. So there you go. Switzerland are playing the Republic of Ireland on Tuesday. And I was cooking on Saturday afternoon, and I had the Republic of Ireland, or Georgia versus the Republic of Ireland game on in the background, and that wasn't good. That was not good. That was not good.
Ireland are leading their group, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
The results
group
are all
leader.
right.
So I think if Ireland beat Switzerland on Tuesday, they've qualified. I think.
Wow.
I think so. I don't know. I thought I heard someone say that on the radio, that they've got a game against, I think, Denmark and also Switzerland, and if we win one of those games, then we qualify. Maybe we qualify for a qualifier or something, I don't quite know.
Right,
But who knows? Probably, knowing the way that these European qualifiers are going these days, you qualify for a qualifier to play in the Nations League, and if you get to the Nations League final, you then get to, I don't know, slay a mammoth, and if you do that, then you can qualify for Euro 2020, so...
Okay. Well, I'd back on 11 Irish footballers against a mammoth. Just about. Dani Ceballos played 64 minutes for Spain as they were held to a shock Euro 2020 qualifying draw by Norway. Is that really a shock? Norway are the coming nation. They've got some good young players They got some good young players.
7 consecutive victories for Spain, but Saul gave them the lead. Josh King converted from the spot in the 4th minute of stoppage time to end Spain's winning run.
Well, there you go. I mean, Dani Ceballos starting for Spain. He's doing well, isn't he, to be a starting 11 player for them. That bodes well for him, I suppose, and he must feel that this loan move is working out for him. Did you see his comments about Real Madrid during the press conference for Spain?
Yes, I did.
No surprises there, really.
No, not really. He said he's happy, and then he sort of weighed back in them and said that, he wants to make it at Real Madrid. So he's kind of covering all his bases there, which is fair enough. You take things that players say on international duty with a bit of a pinch of salt, I think. Going back to Aubameyang, he was the Player of the Month, Premier League Player of the Month, scoring 5 times in September.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with that. I think Arsenal voted Guendouzi their Player of the Month.
Well, Arsenal fans.
Yeah. I think the Arsenal.com Player of the Month for September was Guendouzi, but the Premier League Player of the Month for September was Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang.
Well, I think the latter is probably more reflective of the contribution that he's made, and that's not to criticise Guendouzi at all, who I think has been very good and one of those players who's been a positive for us. But when it comes right down to it, we have we've got a fantastic goal scorer in Aubameyang. I have a question here, actually. Let me see if I can find it. It comes from the Gunnar Talk at the Gunnar Talk TV, and he says, with the news that Aubameyang is in talks for a new deal, after seeing how Ozil's bumper paycheck didn't have the desired impact to his contributions on the field, is the reluctance from some fans to once again go big on wages for one of our top players justified?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen much reluctance. I don't know if that is a sentiment that is out there, but I haven't seen many people saying, I don't think we should sign Aubameyang up. As far as I can tell, most fans want that to happen. Do I think we're right to be concerned? I think it's fair to having sort of gone down that road with Ozil and seen how that's played out. I think it is fair to question that, and I do wonder if that will be a factor in negotiations with Aubameyang, whether they will look to maybe structure the deal slightly differently or incentivise the player differently to give them a bit of protection. I think it's only natural that you would do that. But I do think that he's a player we need to keep. And if that means giving him a new contract at this stage, I think so be it. Because I almost think there's that get out with Aubameyang that if in a year's time you decide you don't want him, or in 2 years' time, I feel like there will be clubs, maybe in China or elsewhere, who would take him off your hands. I think he's got that pedigree and he's always going to score goals at a certain level. So I'm absolutely on board with giving him a new deal. There's no question for me. What about you?
Look, he's got less than 2 years left on his contract. We're heading to a point where in the summer he's got 12 months left on his contract. And that then becomes a thing. It becomes an issue because people say, he's into the last year of his contract. Will he, won't he? It's a distraction. So on a very basic level, if we're happy to keep him for a couple more seasons, then yes, we've got to give him a new deal. Should his new deal reflect his importance to the team? Absolutely. He's a top player at the very top of his game. He is, I won't say carrying the team, but he's hugely important to where we've got to this season in Premier League terms because of the goals that he's scoring. He's doing it without the kind of creativity around him that you might like. Yeah. I don't see any problem with giving him a new deal. I know people draw parallels between Ozil's new contract and the apparent decline in his contributions. I don't know that that's necessarily a situation that will happen with every single player if you give them a new deal, because with Ozil, I feel like it was a little bit different in the sense that we gave him a new deal because Sanchez was going. And I don't think we could, as a club, be seen to lose the two players who were very reflective of the club. When people thought about Arsenal, they thought Ozil and Sanchez. We couldn't be seen to lose two players on basically free transfers, which Ozil would have been had he not signed that deal. We could have lost him on a free transfer. So I don't think the circumstances were ideal when it came to Arsenal extending Ozil's deal. I think with Aubameyang, what it is a reward for what he's done since he arrived, and reflects his importance and what he can still contribute. And I don't think we would be offering him a new deal. I don't think this current regime, if you like, the Raul-led football side of Arsenal, would be offering him a new long-term deal if they had doubts over his ability to score goals for the next, 18, 24 months at least. So in one way it's a sign that they think he can still play at the top level for another couple of years, and if you have a year after that, then you've got some way of maybe recouping some money from him. So I think it's very different from the Ozil thing.
Yeah, and his age doesn't really concern me. I mean, apparently, speaking to people who've worked on the performance side at Arsenal, his numbers sort of aren't really declining as you would anticipate a player of that age to, in terms of his physical capacity. He's 30 now, he'll be 31 next summer. That's not necessarily a cliff that he's going to fall off. I think he's got at least a couple of years in him of playing at something close to the current level. And if we want those years to be at Arsenal, we've got to give him a new contract. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me. I think we desperately need Aubameyang. What did you make, by the way, we just touched on Mesut Ozil, of Raul Sanllehi's comments about Mesut Ozil in the week at the Fans Forum meeting? Did you think they were particularly noteworthy, or just sort of playing a straight bat?
Kind of playing a straight bat. This idea that it's not that he's not working well, it's just that others are working better. It's like it does hammer home the idea that his selection or his lack of selection rather, is entirely based on his commitment or work on the training ground or whatever, his application. Yeah, because it's not about talent. It can't be about talent, because there are a few players in this Arsenal squad who have more talent, than Mesut Ozil. It's just one of those things that, we get this little bit of clarity, and then you think, how can it keep going on? What does he have to do to play in the Europa League, or the Carabao Cup or whatever it might be? And if we have concerns over his fitness, how's he going to get match fit? If what's he played? 140 minutes so far of whatever it might be, nearly 1,000 minutes at Arsenal, over 1,000 minutes that Arsenal have played. It's just one of those that you go, there must be more to it than we know. There has to be more to it than we know. I don't know what it is, but we remain slightly in the dark, so we're left to fill the gaps ourselves.
I suppose the only thing we learnt is that certainly it seems like Raul, and you'd have to guess the rest of the sort of football hierarchy at the club, seem to be on side with Emery in this. There had been some suggestion of, well, how would they feel about such a valuable asset being used in that way? But at least publicly, there didn't seem to be any kind of dissent from Sanllehi to Emery's decision. Yeah.
Well, look, it's one of those that we're not going to get any more clarity on until we see the next
Emery's
squad.
Book.
Yeah, until Unai Emery's book. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
We'll have to wait a long time for that.
What else? The other thing that I wanted to ask you about since last we talked was the Mustafi interview.
Yeah,
which was quite amazing, I have to say.
It was.
I didn't necessarily agree with everything Mustafi said. This idea that things only started going wrong around Christmas 2018, Christmas of last year. I think that's a rose-tinted version of events from his point of view. But the very first question was, Mr. Mustafi, are you the second worst defender in the world? It's like, what?
It was a pretty spicy interview. Yeah, I don't know who the journalist involved actually was, I must say, and I don't know if that's something stylistically that that they do, but it was unusual. It's unusual to hear a footballer talk with such honesty, really, and without any of those cliches. I mean, it happens, but usually when players are retired, you know, we're waiting for Arsene Wenger's book to know what he really thinks, because it's when people are kind of out of the game, they have that freedom to speak. I suppose Mustafi is quite a unique situation, really, because he must feel a bit like he has nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, at Arsenal, certainly. The journalist is called Jorn Mein.
Right.
With Spiegel Online.
Well, he didn't pull any punches, let's put it like that.
He didn't, and Mustafi didn't, back away from...
shirk. Yeah,
no, it was great. I mean, I think as an interview, whether you like Mustafi or you don't like Mustafi, whether you agree with what he said or what he didn't say, as an interview, I thought it was absolutely great, because a lot of the time, footballer interviews are really, really boring because they're all media trained. They know what to say, what not to say, how to say certain things. And what you don't get is any insight into their personality. One of the few that we have seen be very upfront is Hector Bellerin, and he has given more than one interview in which he's spoken about things that most footballers will not touch with a 10-foot barge pole. You know, whether it's racism, climate change, Catalan independence. You know, he's spoken about women's reproductive rights and abortion rights and all those kind of things. And nobody else has ever, as far as I'm aware, very few footballers have ever gone there. And that makes it interesting to listen to that person. And I thought this was a really, really interesting interview, because Mustafi was very upfront, very honest. And, I think you're right that basically he's made it clear, and Arsenal have made it clear that, look, we don't want you. While he's here, he's doing a job, and he will do that job, and I think that's absolutely to be respected. But it's not going to really change much about, what his future holds by being honest in an interview like this.
No, I mean, his objective now is basically play well enough in these Europa League games to earn himself a move somewhere, probably as soon as possible, where he can play every week. And I do honestly wish him luck with that. I do think that the way he has knuckled down and the way he's fronted up in that interview, and maybe he didn't admit as much fault as some fans would like, but at the end of the day, he's a human being, and he sees it differently, inevitably, and I think that's absolutely fair enough. At the end of the day, he almost has to tell himself the story he has to tell himself to help himself recover from this situation. And I thought it was a great interview, and I wish football was a bit more like that there was a bit more of an honest dialogue instead of falling back on sort of these quite tired phrases. It's kind of mad that it had to get to this point for Mustafi to be able to talk like that. But I do think that I don't think his reputation at Arsenal is ever going to recover, but I think it definitely did him a few favours, actually, his honesty in that situation. And I must say as well, I was particularly amused by the thing about the car stopping the traffic.
Oh, yeah.
Because that stemmed from a tweet from the Canon on Twitter, who is my cousin, who had sort of semi-ironically, I think, posted a picture of Mustafi's car blocking the road. And Mustafi cited that as kind of the height of the catastrophe, which shows how when you're the man involved, everything can feel maybe more pernicious than it's intended to be. Yeah, sure. I thought that was very funny as well, to be honest. Yeah. Shows how these things can spiral.
Well, exactly. Or how something that is quite obviously a joke can be taken a bit too seriously when you feel like there is a kind of weight of the world upon you, or criticism or whatever it might be, And look, I think another interesting aspect of this were people saying afterwards, well, do you feel bad for criticising Mustafi now? And it's like, well, no, hang on a second. The fact that he's open and honest in an interview, and you maybe come away feeling or being reminded, okay, players are human beings, it doesn't mean that criticism of what they do on the pitch is somehow fundamentally wrong. I mean, that's why we do what we do, and that's what people want to read, and people don't want to read or listen to us. Let's say the Carabao Cup final, or the Carling Cup final, whatever the fuck it was, when we played Manchester City. And Mustafi made
It was
that...
the Clown Car Cup final.
Yeah,
I think you'll find it was called.
Mustafi made that ridiculous mistake with Aguero. What are we supposed to do when we come on and do a podcast, or when you write about it for a blog? Go, yeah, it was a mistake, but don't forget, he is a human being with feelings. You can't do that either. You know, you have to be critical, and footballers expect a measure of criticism. As we often say, the line is, you know, when it crosses over into abuse, and obviously, you know, directing messages, you know, straight at him on his social media accounts, telling him what you think of him, is really unacceptable on any level. You know, I think that's true of footballers or anybody in that way. When you could just sort of not do that. That's the really simple solution. Just don't do it. But to be critical, to talk about and to debate and discuss a player's performance, a team's performance, we have to be able to do that, whether they're humans or not. When they become androids in the future, and footballers are just androids, when it's Terminator versus, I don't know, Marvin the paranoid android, you know, we can say what we want because they don't have feelings. But there you go.
Yeah. And to be honest, even if you can be phlegmatic about it and sort of say, well, you know, he's a human being, mistakes happen, you might be able to do that the first time. But after the 10th time, you know, I think a bit more, you know, concerted analysis is absolutely fair enough. There we go. Is that part one, do you think?
That's part one. I think it's 40 minutes. Considering we only got 4 minutes out of Nico Yennaris, I think we've done quite well.
You let us down, Nico. And I don't mean by defecting to China. But, OK, let's call that part one, and we'll come back with part two, I suppose.
Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part two, where we answer questions you sent to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog on the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog, and also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. If you want to be one, patreon.com/the Arseblog. Just a little one here from there, James. It comes from Neil Sieglechner. I think. I think. And he says, thoughts on Wenger's upcoming biography. Are you as disappointed as I am that the title isn't Handbrake Off? It's apparently going to be called My Life in Red and White.
My Life in Red and White.
It's a bit like...
There must have been something catchier. Do you know what I mean? Arsonist would have been my choice. What else? Have you got any other titles for an Arsene Wenger autobiography? It's quite a fun game.
Great Expectations?
Lovely.
I don't know.
I think that's taken. I mean, yeah, My Life in Red and White.
I mean Monaco was red and white, wasn't it?
He's only managed teams that play in red and white, actually. He made that point the other night. So.
Oh, really? So Grand Passat?
Grand Passat play in red and white as well. So I suppose that limited his, you know, when people say, why isn't he back in management? That really cut down the amount of clubs. You know, when Newcastle came a-calling, it was never going to happen. No,
there was too much black and white.
Exactly. My life. So I suppose it makes sense from that point of view, and maybe that suggests that it is going to be a, you know, not just an account of his time at Arsenal, but a proper autobiography covering a significant spell at Monaco, which I think is incredibly formative, you know, for Arsene Wenger, and a lot of what we became accustomed to with him, I think, you know, was sort of a consequence of what happened there.
Yeah.
What was the original question? Now that we've got obsessed.
Oh, it was just basically your thoughts on it. I thought that was quite good.
Yeah.
I mean, Daniel Keenan on Twitter at FishGoTech79, with all the talk of Arsene's autobiography, what one thing would you ask him if you were the biographer?
Well, look, I mentioned Park is really high on that list for me. I know it's such a weird sort of cul-de-sac in Arsenal history, but I think that makes me all the more curious about it. We've talked about this before. I mean, there are things that, you know, the summer of 2011, that's a hell of a chapter in its own right, isn't it? With Cesc and Nasri and everything that went on there.
Yeah. I think I'd like to ask him, like, which player did he expect a lot from, but it never materialized, whether that was a young player coming through the academy or a young player that he brought to the club from abroad who never quite made the grade, or it just didn't happen for various reasons, and why that was. And certainly that would be the case with some of the signings. Like who was it you bought that you thought would be, you know, much better than they actually were?
Yeah, I mean, Arshavin would be surely one of the more intriguing names on that list in terms of, you know, the talent that he had and the way it didn't quite materialise. And from the young player point of view, I mean, he was so excited about people like, I don't know, Johan Juru, for example, who, you know, has had a very decent career, but not quite at the level that was anticipated. Yeah. And Arsene's eye is so good. You know, he's such an extraordinary eye for talent. You know, you think of someone like Serge Gnabry, for example. He championed him from his mid-teens, and look what he's doing now. Of course, you don't get everyone right, but clearly he's a brilliant talent spotter. It'd be interesting to know who delivered against that potential and who didn't, and the reasons that happened. But it's interesting because, you know, there's a bit more distance. I mean, Arsene Wenger's autobiography, let's say, had he written it in the early 2000s, kind of while his rivalry with Sir Alex Ferguson was still brewing, you know, it would have painted a very different picture of that time than what we'll get at this point. So, yeah, I'll be curious to know sort of where the heat and the drama and the tension still lies for Arsene, and how he's, you know, there was clearly a lot of pain as well for him in those last few years at Arsenal. I think about his relationship with the media, his relationship with the supporters, and I wonder to what extent that will be visible in the pages. I really am so fascinated. There's not a football book I would rather read, genuinely.
Yeah, same. Assuming, you know, I think it has to be, what am I trying to say here? It can't be one of those sort of football books by numbers publications, you know? And I think about that amazing interview he did with L'Équipe, you know, towards the end of his time at Arsenal, and, you know, where he expanded on things beyond the realms of football. It's always interesting to hear him talk about football, but like, how did his philosophies in life, or the way that he sees life, impact on the way that he managed and dealt with players, or dealt with certain incidents, or dealt with pressure? You know, would he have done certain things differently? With the benefit of hindsight, of course, I think many people would. But you know, I hope there's that kind of an angle to it. Like, what way did Wenger the man influence Wenger the manager, and vice versa?
Yeah, and he's always had a bit of a knack for social commentary, to be honest. You know, he begins a lot of sentences with things like, "We live in a time where," or, you know, "we are now in a world where," and he's often quite prophetic in that way. And his story, sort of culturally, is really interesting. He arrived in a nation as a sort of skilled migrant, effectively, in the 90s, and at the end of his time with Arsenal and in English football kind of coincided with a rejection of the European continent. So I do think he'll have a lot to say about everything, really. I hope so. I hope it's not just game by game, because he's a more fascinating man than that. And August 2020, you say? Well, I cannot. Yeah.
Autumn 2020. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we look forward to that enormously. Let's have a question. This question is from David Nobbs on Twitter, and David says, assuming you consider Holding to be a first choice regular for the rest of the season, who would you replace out of Luiz and Socrates, and which side would you play them on? As Luiz and Holding both appear to prefer being the left-sided centre-back.
Yes, they do. It's a good question. My gut kind of tells me Socrates.
You go Socrates?
I think so. But it's such a difficult one, because we have to see Holding get back to the right physical level, which is going to take a bit of time. You know, he's been out for 9-10 months at this point. and he is coming back, and he's obviously working on his fitness and everything else. But match sharpness and playing regularly has a big impact on a player's form. Yeah.
I also think with Holding, we need to see more of Holding in a back four, because, all his good runs in the team have come in a back three. That last season, that was the case. And in 2017, leading into the FA Cup final, that was the case. So, I just think, in terms of we're talking about what side he would play on, things like that, I just don't think we've seen really enough of him in a four to talk about that with any great surety. Or assuredness, rather. So, my gut actually says Louise and Holding, but I'm not sure on the orientation of them. I just wonder, with the emphasis of sort of playing out from the back, they're certainly the two who are more comfortable on the ball, and I just have a feeling for that as a partnership. But I can see it's actually a very difficult one to choose between those three.
I can't choose yet because I think we need to see. We need to see Holding come back. We need to see if the others respond to the challenge that Holding presents to them.
They've actually been a little bit better in the last couple of games, I would say, Louise and Socrates.
Yeah, they have. And maybe it's because we haven't been put under a great deal of pressure, and we haven't also caused ourselves too many problems. But I'm sure you saw the tweet from Morbinho over the weekend. I did a post about it today on Arseblog about how we're allowing 17 shots per game, which is really bad. And the sample size, of course, is small. It's 8 games, and it is skewed a little bit by the Watford game where they had a whole pile of shots.
Yeah.
But, I think it really does illustrate that the issues we have defensively are not the sole preserve of our back four and our defenders. And that in order to protect them, we need to get the midfield balance right. And I don't think Emery has quite done that yet. So I'm curious to see what that statistic is like in 2 months' time, because if it's the same, I think we're in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're absolutely right to say that statistic, not that it takes the heat off our centre halves, but it does show that this is a bigger structural problem. But I think most of us recognise that.
Yeah,
I am looking forward to Holding potentially being available, though, as well as Kieran Tierney and Hector Bellerin. I mean,
well, on that, I have a question here from Patty Hughes. 77 at Patty Hughes 77 on Twitter. He says, I think if you take Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson out of Liverpool, they would not be the same team. Do you think Tierney and Bellerin will have the same impact for Arsenal? I've heard you think they won't transform the team, but I believe they will. Where do you stand? I mean, I think they will make us better. I don't dispute that. I just don't think that they're like the magic ingredients that suddenly turn us into a team that looks like it can control and dominate games, because I think that comes from a different part of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, look, they definitely improved that Liverpool team, and if you took them out, you'd miss them. But that Liverpool team, when you go through the spine of it, Van Dijk, in midfield, you've got Fabinho and others up front, Firmino, Salah, Mane. I mean, there's a lot going for that team besides the fullbacks. I do think that, if you do consider Holding, Bellerin, Tierney and Lacazette all starters in this team, the absence of 4 players, or let's say the reintroduction of 4 players to a starting 11, could have quite a profound effect. That's a good chunk of a team. And I know the question was just about the fullbacks, but I think, there is something to be said for the fact that we could get better with those 4 introduced. But I feel like what we have is 2 very exciting attacking fullbacks, and that will be great as long as the rest of the team is able to sort of compensate and give them the freedom to get forward and do those things, Yeah. Yeah, look, and that's what I'm not so sure about, to be honest.
Well, look, I think they are definitely going to make us better. It's just, my feeling on this is that they should come in and do what the other guys are doing, but do it better, if that makes sense. Like, they're upgrades on what we've already got. It shouldn't have that big an effect on how the team itself plays. You know, so yeah, we'll see what they can produce, and hopefully they can really they can make an impact.
It'll be interesting as well to see what kind of partnerships develop on the flanks. I feel like that's an area of the pitch where the partnership between fullback and the guy in front of them is actually pretty important. And, you know, having Hector Bellerin back, who knows what that might do for Pepe, for example, or what having Kieran Tierney might mean for Saka or whoever else plays on that left-hand side. As for Lacazette coming back and how we accommodate him and Aubameyang, I think that's a really interesting debate, because Aubameyang, in these first few weeks of the season, I think has absolutely nailed down that and shown what a force he can be as a centre-forward. So it will be interesting to see what Emery does with Lacazette back soon.
I think I have a question here, actually, from Clarkey, at Tom Clarkey _ on Twitter, who says, will a front three of Lacazette, Aubameyang and Pepe ever realistically work? As much as we love them as individual players, Aubameyang is wasted on the wing, and I'm not sure of the solution.
I'm not sure either, I have to say, actually. And I'm someone who has said many times in the past, I don't have a massive issue with Aubameyang starting from the left wing. You know, I think that it can work and he can still score goals from that spot. I just feel like the way we're playing at the moment, we feel very reliant on him in that central area. And maybe when Lacazette came back, that would change, and maybe it wouldn't feel like, well, our only chance of scoring a goal is to make sure we've got Aubameyang through the middle. But that is kind of how it seems right now. It's interesting. I mean, it's not a front three that feels particularly balanced, does it? It doesn't fill me with confidence that it's going to click. But I wonder if that's just because I'm sort of raised in the Arsene Wenger school of, well, you need one of those players to be a kind of floating midfielder almost, you know.
Maybe, or you need somebody behind that front three to supply them with the kind of service and ammunition that they deserve. I mean, I understand it's a difficult decision to make when it comes to Aubameyang in particular, because, you know, when Lacazette's back, he really can only play as, you know, the number 9 or the sort of 9.5, whatever it might be, but as a centre forward. And he is capable of dropping deep and getting involved in play, and I think he does that pretty well. I just feel like if we are going to... we don't have to. Emery has to find a way to make it work, I think. Because we've got a couple of 55 million pound strikers and the club record signing in Pepe. I think they will want to play together. I think that trio will want the opportunity to try and form, I was going to say a partnership, but of course there's 3 of them, but, you know, to form a unit that really works for Arsenal. Yeah. So I think that's another side of things that he is going to have to deal with.
Well, that goes a long way, wanting to. You know, we saw that with Aubameyang and Lacazette. When Aubameyang came in, it could have been, you know, confrontational. It could have been a battle between them, but there was a clear indication that they wanted to collaborate. They wanted to play together. And, you know, like Amy's piece about Aubameyang said, he is very much that character. He's a star, but he's a team guy first and foremost. And I think we've seen that. And if that means him starting in an unfamiliar position, I think he's relatively content to do it. You almost wonder if there's some way of orienting it where, you know, does Lacazette potentially be the guy who drops a little bit deeper in a central area, and you have Aubameyang and Pepe kind of, you know, as a V kind of coming off that going forward. You know, that feels more balanced to me almost than saying, well, it's Lacazette right up top and then you've got Aubameyang playing deeper behind that. Yeah, I
mean, maybe the other thing to consider is that if we think of them as the front three, and you think of maybe, you know, Aubameyang on the left, and Pepe on the right. If we are talking about our fullbacks coming back to change the way that we play, if our fullbacks are getting forward more and delivering more from the final third, what you've got then is Aubameyang and Pepe squeezing into the middle.
3 guys in the box.
So you've got 3 guys in the box, and you've got 3 players who can ostensibly slot into striking roles, central, left and right, and maybe that's the way that he can make it work.
I mean, and it's interesting when you look at the midfield. I mean, I know it's a bit of a lazy comparison between Arsenal and Liverpool, but Liverpool sold Coutinho. They don't play Lallana. They don't play Oxlade-Chamberlain, really. They don't have a number 10, but they don't struggle to create chances. And it's because, I guess, Firmino is kind of doing both jobs. And I still think Lacazette, maybe not quite at that level, but I still think he can make a pretty good fist at that. And it is going to need players to compromise a bit for it to work, because there's not an obvious way of deploying it where it's like, that just makes loads of sense and should click really easily. It is a big job for Emery.
Yeah.
And it has to happen. I don't think... the Ozil situation is one thing, but I think given the fees that we paid for these players, given the fact we're looking to extend the contracts of both Aubameyang and Lacazette, I don't think we can afford to not have these guys out there on the pitch.
Yeah.
Shall we have another question?
Yeah. Let's.
What's this one say? Okay, this is from Hexenio on the Discord. And Hexenio says, to both Andrew and James, if you represented Arsenal but could only do so in a non-playing role, what role would you pick?
What role would I pick? That's a really good question. Stadium announcer?
Nice.
I think I could be a good stadium announcer.
Yeah, I think you'd be very good at that. I mean, you wouldn't go for you could say, I don't know, manager, technical director. You don't. Is it that you don't feel you're qualified?
Look,
I mean, we're definitely not qualified.
Absolutely, 100% definitely not qualified for that role. But it
might be fun.
I wouldn't presume it would be fun until everyone started to hate me.
Well, that's the issue.
For the terrible job that I would do.
You want a job where you're going to survive the inevitable managerial cut, don't you? You want a job where you're part of the part. You're sort of I don't know what's the word, safe, I guess.
Yeah.
From the fans.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you could curry favour with the fans. So, imagine if I was stadium announcer and ladies and gentlemen, today's Tottenham team: number 1, twat. Number 2, wanker. Number 3, etc. Number 9, Harry Kane. Boo. Everybody, come on, boo. That would be amazing. Think of the fun you'd have in the stadium. You wouldn't last long in the job, probably.
I don't know. I think I would choose Gunnosaurus.
Gunnosaurus?
Yeah. I'd like to get in the suit. You're safe, you're behind the mask, but you're this iconic figure. You can get involved in a touchline fracas. I would. I think that would be quite good fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to think, I would love to work for, Arsenal. Imagine interviewing the manager every week and stuff like that. But I guess when you do work for the club, obviously it's a great job, but you are kind of constricted in terms of what you can actually say or get away with, or I think some of the things we've said on this podcast about certain performances or certain players probably wouldn't fly if we were employees. So.
No. If it was an official channel, certainly you would have to moderate your language in many ways, and think about saying that. Like, sometimes I feel very sorry for Adrian Clark when he's having to do the breakdown.
Yeah, that's a tough gig.
And
sometimes.
we've had a really, really bad performance, or somebody has done something unbelievably stupid, and he has to say, it wasn't his best moment, something like that,
Not quite sure what he was thinking here, but he does. He treads that line very well. Fair play to Adrian, but that can be a tough gig. I think Gunnosaurus would be quite a fun one. You're there for all the big occasions. You're in the centre circle. You're on the pitch, before the match. Yeah,
getting high fives from all the players as they come in.
Exactly. You feel part of it, but you don't have to actually play.
Yeah. Plus, you would be kind of anonymous, which would be useful, because we have a tweet here from Highbury Fields, who's at Highbury_Fields, who said, my wife sat opposite Martin Keown in a Wagamama in Edinburgh and didn't realise that she was sitting opposite him, but noticed straight away when she saw Gunnerblog in a pub in Highbury yesterday. Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
And the worst part of that is I wasn't even a customer of that pub. I was just going in to use the toilet, and I'd been caught in the act. And I thought I'd styled it out so well. I was like, I've really kept my head down here. No one's going to notice me. Great. I'll just sneak in, use the toilet, sneak out. And I've been outed publicly on a podcast.
Did they catch you in the in the bar itself.
No. I mean, to be fair, it's a pub I've been in many times, so I feel like I've earned that to an extent.
Yeah. You can just sort of slip in, spend a penny, based on all the pounds that you've spent in there in the past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It seems fair. But I did have to do that a couple of weeks ago in a different pub, and it was a really urgent situation where I was like, I desperately need the toilet here. So I snuck into this pub, and I was on my way to the toilet when the barmaid sort of just shouted out, "Excuse me, can I help you?" And I was like, I'm just gonna quickly use the loo. And she was like, "Okay, cool. And then you'll be getting a drink." I was like, "Yeah, I'll just go to the loo first, and then I'll get the drink." And she said, "All right, well, why don't you tell me?" And I've nearly pissed myself at this point. So it's like genuinely very stressful. She's like, "Why don't you tell me what you want, and then I can have it ready for you when you come out?" And I was like,
so what did you do? Did you get a drink?
I had a pint. What else could I do? I was like, you've got me. £5 that cost me going to the loo in there.
You had a pint though. Surely you'd have a small drink, get an espresso or a coffee.
In for a pint. And the worst thing is, I went to the loo, drank a pint, left immediately, and he did the loo again.
You have to find a different pub.
That's what happens.
You have to find a different pub.
It's just this endless pub crawl of me spending unnecessary money.
Yeah, you go in for a week. "Excuse me, can I help you?"
But fair play to that barmaid. She absolutely knew what I was doing and acted accordingly.
Well, look, you got to hold your hands up.
Got to hold my hands up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this question comes from Wigan Gooner, and you might be able to tell me this because I don't really remember. But Wigan Gooner says, currently going through the 89 audiobook by Amy Lawrence. Do you think history has been unkind to smudger Alan Smith? The book has reminded me how good he was. Ian Wright's star seems to have eclipsed old Smudge, and I think he's been forgotten by many fans, which is a shame, as I thought he was an excellent striker. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he was an excellent striker.
Was he very good? I mean, he was before my time.
I think he spoke himself. We did a podcast with him last... I can't remember when it was. He had a book out not too long ago, Alan Smith Arsecast. Let's see when it was. August 2018. And he'd released his... Yeah, so it's episode 489 of the podcast. And in it, he talks himself about how when Ian Wright arrived, it sort of had an impact on him as a goal scorer, and then he got some injuries as well. But he was a really, really good striker. Came from Leicester, obviously played a big part in us winning the league in 89, scored that classic goal to win us the European Cup Winners' Cup. Great with his head, brilliant hold-up play. And yeah, maybe he has, been eclipsed a little bit by some of the players who've come since. But how many goals did he score?
Question. I remember you used to often draw a comparison maybe between Olivier Giroud and Alan Smith in terms of style. Is that right?
I mean, certainly in terms of the headed goals that he scored, he was really brilliant in the air. And great touch for a big man, all that kind of stuff as well. He was a better technical player than I think people realised.
115 goals.
115 goals.
He scored for Arsenal.
That's a lot of goals.
Yeah.
That is a lot of goals.
Go through the YouTubes, guys. Let's, have an Alan Smudger Smith celebration. But I mean, obviously as well in 89, I suppose even in that, it's kind of eclipsed by Michael Thomas somewhat, isn't he? So
yeah.
But
of course, the guy who scores the winning goal. But only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players have scored more goals for Arsenal than Alan Smith, and lots of them are from the quite distant past. The only contemporary players really who've scored more are Bergkamp, Van Persie, Ian Wright, and Thierry Henry. So
it's not bad company to be keeping.
Not at all. Actually, speaking of Ian Wright and Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp, AFC Australia, who's at Arsenal AUS on Twitter, says, what were your thoughts after watching the Ian Wright Bergkamp video, particularly the bit where they spoke about what they thought of today's Arsenal in comparison to the Arsenal of their playing days?
Do you know what? My thoughts were, I feel very fortunate that I experienced my sort of Arsenal adolescence and really fell in love with this team in a period where Ian Wright and Dennis Bergkamp and some of the other players at that era were on the pitch together, and I I miss those days enormously. It actually really made me miss Highbury desperately.
Yeah.
And I walked past Highbury yesterday, actually.
On your way to going to the toilet?
I was just knocking on the door of Highbury House, like, excuse me, please. I know you don't know who I am, but I desperately need the toilet.
There's like 700 apartments there now. You just ring on one of the bells.
Yeah.
Excuse me, please. I'm an Arsenal fan. May I please use your...
dribbling down my leg all through the marble halls. And it really rammed that point home to me. You know, look, there's a lot to love about the modern Arsenal, and of course the Bergkamp and Wright thing principally made me think about those players, but the setting and the stadium was really special to me, and it is sad to think you know, we won't have that back. So I definitely felt a big pang of nostalgia for Highbury, among other things. What about you?
I just really loved it. I loved I just loved how the two of them got on. Obviously, you're talking about two of the greatest players in Arsenal's history. Yeah, look, it was brilliant. I think Wrighty brought out some things in Bergkamp that maybe you wouldn't have seen otherwise, you know. But just, amazing to think that these guys were playing for us and doing what they did for us. And if you haven't seen it, it's on Ian Wright's YouTube channel. It is, you know, just a fantastic watch. Sit down, 40 minutes, make a cuppa, grab a Kit Kat, whether it's got foil on it or not, and, you know, enjoy. It really is. It was just brilliant. It was a great piece of content is the wrong word, but Arsenal-related nostalgia or whatever it might be. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there these days. A lot of people are making a lot of stuff, but this was one of the best things I've seen in absolutely ages.
It's fantasy content, if you'll forgive that word, isn't it? It's this kind of stuff of dreams, really, to see them sitting down and reminiscing like that in Bergkamp's home. And what did you make of their comments about the modern Arsenal?
I'm not sure I really thought about them too much, to be honest, because I was too caught up in what was going on with the nostalgia.
The haze of nostalgia. Yeah, I was kind of the same.
Yeah, there's a way. Obviously, you're going to look back and you're going to think about your own time at the club and what we did and what we achieved, and, you know, winning cups, winning Premier League titles, going a season unbeaten. You know, those were incredible achievements with an incredible team. So I guess it's easy to look back and sort of say, well, yeah, wouldn't it be great if we were a bit more like that? But I think as well we have to take into account that there were, you know, circumstances at play at that moment in time, as I've said here before. You know, for a club like Arsenal to have, at the same time, four of the best players in Europe, you know, it's sort of unprecedented. It's unprecedented. We don't have that now. It's hard to think how we're ever going to have it again. And in Bergkamp, Wright, Pires, Henry, you had four of the best players in the world at that time all playing for us, with other great players too. You know, people like Sol Campbell at the top of his game, probably not far behind that level for a period of time. You know, we've talked about this, you know, countless times, but
Ashley Cole, yeah, I mean, some absolutely world-class players, yeah.
Yeah, but it's great. So, yeah. It's great. Just go and watch it.
And we're lucky that we have that, definitely.
Yeah.
Rusky Adam on the Patreon says, do you guys think Emi Martinez has what it takes to push Leno out of the starting 11 for the Premier League at any point this season? He's looked solid so far and had a great loan out at Reading too.
I don't know. There's the honest answer, because I haven't seen enough of Emi Martinez. You know, I had some doubts coming into the season simply because of how little he'd played, you know, in his career. He's 26, 27 years of age and he hasn't played regularly, but he had a good loan spell at Reading last season. He's looked very good in the Carabao Cup, but I still think it's a bit too early to make that kind of a judgment on him. I think Leno has been very good, but I also think Martinez has been good, and I wrote about this yesterday on the blog, that having the two goalkeepers is a real positive of this season. I think Martinez is capable of pushing Leno, or certainly providing more competition than, you know, someone like Ospina might have, for example. And it's great to see him make some progress. He was away with Argentina. He didn't play for Argentina during the international break, but he did get the call up. So that shows you that there's something going on with him. But as to whether he can win a place in the team on a regular basis, I don't know. I mean, it feels like, you know, why would Leno lose his place?
Yeah.
It would be either an injury or a very serious loss of form.
A serious dip in form.
Dip in form.
I mean, I think you wrote about this, didn't you? I think that we had a message from someone saying, talk about Leno more on the podcast. I mean, I think he is very good and has been very good. And, you know, the money that we paid for him, which looked expensive at the time, feels quite cheap right now, I think, in terms of what he's doing for this team. So I don't think it's a question... You know, in the past we've had number ones who maybe looked a bit vulnerable, or where we were thinking it'd be good if we could get someone else in. I don't think that's the situation now. I think we just have a good number one and a capable number two. And I think given our commitments across 2 competitions, I think that's right. But I'm not sure I see Martinez edging Leno out in the Premier League. I think it would take something quite dramatic for that to happen, or an injury, as you say. Fingers crossed.
Exactly. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Right. Well, look, I think given this is the interlull and we're now, you know, a good chunk of the way into this podcast, I think we can probably call it quits there, can't we?
Yeah, I reckon we've done a good shift.
Yeah, we've done a good shift, and thank you to everybody for listening. If you are an Arseblog member on Patreon, watch out a bit later this week. James and I will be doing another episode of the Waffle podcast, in which we talk about anything that isn't football.
When better to do that than during the interlull?
Exactly. So that'll be coming for you a bit later in the week, probably towards the weekend rather than midweek. But you can join us for that. Of course, we will have an Arsecast on Friday looking ahead to our game next week. Because when football returns at the weekend, we've got to wait, because we're not playing until Monday night against Sheffield United. And that means our next Arsecast Extra will be Tuesday of next week.
Of course.
More Monday night football.
22nd. I know, we've got to wait ever so long.
So annoying. Annoying.
It's a long time to wait to lose to Sheffield United, I'll tell you that.
Well done. That's there is the glass half full outlook that you are renowned for. So. Right. Well, in the meantime, of course, you can fill the glass with your own wee.
True.
Which is good. Save you having to buy a drink you didn't really want, but there you go. I guess we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.